Good afternoon and welcome to our meetup. Today we're going to have a conversation about making co-curricular activities and student services virtual. I'm Michael Ginzberg, Business Dean Emeritus, and I stress the emeritus part at WPI, currently working with Optimal Campus on strategy for higher education institutions in these rather challenging times. We have several guests today who will kick off our conversation. And remember, it is to be a conversation. After initial comments by the three panelists, I'm going to look to you all for questions, comments, anything you'd like to say. If you could please type your questions into chat, or if you don't want to type the full question, just that you have a question or comment to make, indicating the topic would be helpful. My colleague, particularly, I think, I have several colleagues out there who will be monitoring the chat and letting you know who's ready to speak. And then if all goes well, Tom will unmute your microphone just in time. So I'm going to very briefly introduce our three panelists and would ask that they feel free to add more introduction when they begin to speak. In alphabetical order, Angela Coleman, who is the Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs at North Carolina Central University in Durham, North Carolina, where she manages a budget of over $25 million and leads a portfolio of 16 departments in the Division of Student Affairs. Rus Gant, who is an internationally known 3D artist, computer engineer, and educator. Currently, he serves on the research staffs of both Harvard and MIT, pursuing work on the future of real-time 3D computer graphics, virtual and augmented reality. And Leah Kraus, currently the Chief Information Officer at North Carolina Central, where she's responsible for providing innovative vision, strategy, and leadership for the campus in all areas of technology. Tom is going to be posting a couple of survey questions at the beginning, and he'd like everybody to answer those. Please answer them as we begin our conversation, and we'll share the results a little later. But if I could start with a question for Angela. Angela, you ready?
Yes, sir.
Good.
I stay ready.
Good.
I'm in student affairs.
Excellent. So this is a very interesting time. Could you tell us a little bit about what NC Central is doing to build community and provide students services in our new distance virtual campus environment? What have you done already? What are you thinking about how you're preparing for the fall term? And then if you could say something about, did you do anything special recently in light of the events of the past couple of weeks?
Yes, so thank you for the opportunity. And again, you know, I'm coming from North Carolina Central, which is a historically Black college and university. And oftentimes with our types of institutions, we're touted for being able to be, you know, very high touch with our students and provide them with the best wraparound services and personalized attention from administrators and faculty. And sometimes with that doesn't always mean virtual, right? We kind of like face-to-face and touching our students and feeling them. And of course, with this pandemic, that made us make a quick shift. I'm glad to say that we were well equipped on our campus, thanks to Leah Kraus and her team, but as well as my student affairs team, where we use a fully integrated platform called Campus Lab. So, you know, a lot of us here that work with technology are probably familiar with these different softwares, OryxSync, Campus Labs, Presence, etc. So on our campus, North Carolina Central, we utilize the Campus Labs, and we call ours the NCCU Engage. So through that platform, even prior to this pandemic, we were doing a lot of virtual programming, but we did quickly have to shift. So I'm fortunate that I have I would say a group of seasoned professionals that are very comfortable with technology. We also have a very strong student activities board on our campus that we call SAB, that we have worked with very closely to survey the campus population and the students to see what do they want to see in terms of programming. So all of our areas related to student health services, counseling, women's center, men's achievement center have gone forward with individual programming for those areas. Everything and anything from utilizing Zoom, utilizing WebEx. We've done different campaigns for NCCU Life, which is our student life Twitter page, where students have been able to take over Twitter for a day, take over Instagram for a day, just everything and anything. We've done TikTok challenges. We did a lot of events leading up to commencement to recognize our graduates in light of the inability to do an in-person commencement. So we continue to, we plan to continue those type of events. We're going out now, trying to see what students want to see for the fall, because our students are ready to come back to campus, but we have been getting a lot of questions about what is my experience going to look like in the fall, and what is that going to feel like? So we're trying to see how is that going to look and feel. We're not really sure yet. We're still developing that component. In light of the events of the past couple weeks, again, it's been very challenging for staff, for students, and we've been working with our student leaders, in particular, Student Government Association and our other student leaders, to see how we can support them and to let them know that we see them, as well as the staff, and working with our Faculty Senate president, even with our Staff Senate president. So we've had a couple of events. We just had an event last night with our female students of color. Black Girl Room is what we called it, where it's just a space for us to breathe and talk. We did an event last week with a group of panelists for our Men's Achievement Center to kind of speak about what is it like being a Black man in this time and going on. We had about 160 people log into that Zoom, including colleagues from other HBCUs, faculty and staff and students, community members. So, we continue to offer that type of service, in particular with the mental health and wellness piece. Our counseling center was already having Wellness Wednesdays events, and those were focused on COVID related stress and anxiety, but now we've kind of shifted that a bit in light of what's been happening with social injustice and, the riots. So we've shifted that event on Wednesdays. Every Tuesday, we have Transformational Tuesday through our Office of Spiritual Dialogue and Development. So that, same thing, we've been getting a lot of feedback from students and staff that they really enjoy that, and they kind of enjoy that space for them to feel like it's a safe space for them to speak and just be rejuvenated. So a lot of different areas that we're trying to touch in student affairs. We always talk about the holistic development of the student, and that's really what my focus has been with my staff, trying to touch all those different areas, from mental health, spiritual health, just emotionally, how are they doing? And then doing, of course, some practical things related to what is the fall going to look like in terms of health and safety, academics, and how we can support them in their student success.
So Angela, all of these events have been virtual. Are your students dispersed around the state, around the country, or are there any on campus?
We have literally 19 students on campus. That is it. And those are just our students that cannot, they don't have anywhere else to necessarily be. They've gone through an exemption process and they're taking summer classes online. So that was the other piece. They had to be taking classes online. So we have obviously a small population on campus. We are a state institution, so most of our students are within the state of North Carolina. We have others that we feed into from Virginia. Of course, that's one of our big feeder areas, the DMV area, where we get a lot of students. But we don't have any students, like I said, minus those 19 on campus. So everything is, virtual with our students.
Okay, that's terrific. If I could turn to Leah, IT is obviously critical to this. How are you supporting the emergence of these, of all of these services, events, etc.? Is it posing challenges for you, new challenges? Are you finding real pressure points?
Right. So Dr. Coleman and I, her team and our team, they are really collaborative. What we try to do with student affairs as much as possible is get out of their way, because they're always going to do the right thing. They let us know ahead of time, hey, this is a technology we're looking at. Can you review the contract? If there isn't any security issue, we know that they're going to partner with us, and we just, please go forth. And the last thing we want to do is prevent their innovative opportunities. I mean, there's lists of things that I'm thinking of that Dr. Coleman didn't even mention, like the rec center is doing.
Oh yeah, workouts. Yeah, so much. The telehealth, counseling. Yeah, that's the best part. The workouts, virtual workouts are happening too, Michael.
Yeah. So I think from a CIO perspective, you know, there's the IT security hat you have to wear. When we're working with the students in the co-curricular world, it's way different than the curricular world. Do most of their activities on this in the co-curricular world. This from a security, we just have to make sure that the activity is a secure activity for various reasons. But Dr. Coleman's Assistant Vice Chancellor over the health areas, she's actually the chair of our HIPAA compliance committee on campus. So we know that from the, you know, PII kind of stuff, they get that. So my role is to facilitate and get out of the way. That's the easiest thing I can say about how we support student affairs. Not that, you know, we're hands off by any means, and whatever we can do to support them, we will. But she has a team of seasoned professionals. They get the technology, they get what it can do, and it's about the partnership.
And I'll upload some of the flyers, the images, and the little file part here that people want to see kind of just some of the programming, what that looks like.
So Leah, just a question back to the technology. You said something about you'll take a look at technology that Student Affairs is considering. Have you adopted new technology as in response to the emergence of new services, or to support the emergence of new services?
So we had just completed 6 months to a year before this, a complete network refresh, end to end, core to distribution layer to access point, wireless access point. That included enterprise WebEx for faculty, staff, and students. So from a, you know, foundational level, we had a lot already adopted. We had not had a student loaner program previous to this particular issue, and we have a student loaner program. That's something that we worked, actually Student Affairs came to us and said, we're thinking of buying a whole lot of computers for the students. And I said, let's work on this together. Let's figure it out. We have a process for distribution through the library system and all that. Let's not have duplicative. You guys focus on programming and health, and, you know, health around the students. Let us do that. And then we just worked on that. So that was something new that we had not done. We had loaners inside the library, but actually shipping devices to students. That was brand new for us. And we've shipped over 100 out to students, mostly Chromebooks.
Okay.
Yes, so we've adopted Engage. We worked with them to make sure that that technology was working and feeding the data to it about all the students in their courses. So again, the campus adopts the technology. I wouldn't say it's IT, you know, necessarily leading that adoption, which I like. I like it when folks are challenging us to go outside of what we might typically do. So that's kind of what's happened on our campus. We laid the foundation and let the experts in the field kind of bring to us, and us partner together on what needs to happen next. Very
good. So since we're talking about technology, Rus, if I could turn to you and ask a question. You know, your expertise in virtual reality, it would seem that virtual reality has the potential to be very useful for the sort of transformation co-curricular activities. Have you seen any of this in what you're doing at Harvard or MIT? Any of it that you can talk about, or do you see things happening in the near future that are looking interesting and promising?
Sure. Yeah, a lot of what I do is look 3 to 5 years ahead. Try and figure out which technologies are becoming available, which ones fit into the pedagogical category, and which ones fit into the social or co-curricular category as well. Over the last few years, we've really been concentrating on how to take what had been sort of traditional online communication and expand it through various alternate realities, particularly live streaming 360, live virtual reality for students who are off campus or in fact out of the country. We've been running a class in China in parallel with the class on campus, VR on both sides of the equation, students and faculty. What's changed in the last couple of months is an emphasis. As everybody knows, I think, who does any of this survey or talking to the students, a huge part of their learning experience is not in the classroom. Various sort of surveys tell you maybe as much as 2/3 of what they learned by going to college was not in the classroom. It's in the social fabric, it's in the environment, it's in the interaction with faculty and staff outside the classroom. So one of the things we started looking at is if our students could not return, and this is still an open issue for us at Harvard, we have not made the commitment yet, at least fully. There are other areas within the university who have, but was to look at the notion of what I'm calling virtual residential, which is how do you keep all of those activities that Angela and Leah were talking about active and engaging for the students if your only channel of communication is something like Zoom, which is a very narrow portal to try and do these really hands-on sort of, social activities. There's been a lot of experimentation with that, but it's still highly limited by the tech itself. So one of the things we've turned to is trying to see if we could, having the Zoom be the sort of center communication portal, what could you do on the other side, on the teaching side, the learning side, and between the student and student, or student and student services side, technologically that would expand that experience. Certainly one of the simplest ones is to think about audio. The ability to simply give students or encourage them, if you don't give it to them, the ability to use headphones and a mic to block out the external environment, allow them to focus, have clearer audio channels when you have lots of people talking, so you get sort of clearer communication. But also thinking about what is the environment of the student if they're at home, if they're at the place where they're not at the university. How could you alter that environment, which is often chaotic, it's often unpredictable. It is certainly not by any means the ideal learning environment. So we've been designing what I would call a sort of enhanced technology kit, which could be sent to students, which would contain various things like perhaps a set of gaming headphones, but also a mini projector. The ability to split the information on a Zoom, for example, and project part of it onto the wall of your room on a larger scale. So that if your professor is lecturing to you, they're not a talking head staring you in the face, but they might be the whole professor in the classroom, moving about more naturally, giving you the ability to construct your own immersive environment, manipulating the visuals and the sound in your space as a student. On the teaching side, the same thing. Teachers don't like to be confined sitting in a chair staring at a screen. There's mobility in teaching. There's a lot of engagement in moving about the classroom, interacting with physical objects in the classroom. So to actually bring teachers back into the real classroom, because they're still here. They could go on campus even if the students are out in the room, but film them with multiple cameras in a way that they are presenting more of a typical image of what a professor would be if you were sitting in the classroom. If you're in that classroom, you're normally not face-to-face with the instructor. They're moving about, they're active, they're looking at the class. So trying to figure out a kit that would also go to teaching side that would allow them to act and perform more normally in the classroom. So these are sort of part of the puzzle. But on the social side, on the co-curricular side, this is a tough one. A place like Harvard really is all about the sort of co-curricular activities. People come to Harvard because of that experience of being on campus. If you deny them that, this is a big barrier. We've been surveying freshmen and sophomores in terms of their opinions of would they come back if their only choice was Zoom. And quite honestly, 2/3 said they would not. They would rather stay out a semester than basically come for the first time to Harvard as a Zoom experience, because they would be lacking that social experience. So it's a major factor in the decision-making, I think, as to how universities decide to go forward, particularly if they have to go all online or some hybrid in between, which seems to be what most people are coming down to. So we've also been looking at, well, how could you use the technologies to create more of a social fabric outside of Zoom? By doing some of the things that Angela was just talking about, going into areas like TikTok or going to the various sort of gaming environments, the social engagement environments, bringing those in as primary means for the students to communicate with each other as well as the university. So one of the things we're looking at is actually creating a virtual Harvard, which is to essentially replicate in virtual space the actual university, physically, buildings, classrooms, meeting spaces, and produce what I would sort of think of as a sort of mini MMO, a sort of massive online gaming experience, but where the background of the game is the real university, and the game is going to the university. So that students could actually go to their dorm room virtually with their virtual roommates, have side conversations. They could walk from their dorm to their classroom in real time, get the sense of spatiality on the campus, get the sense of, I'll meet you on the steps, I'll meet you in the quad, I'll meet you outside the cafeteria, and then do that in the virtual space. So this is a parallel effort that we're looking at. It obviously takes time, but surprisingly, given a lot of the technologies we have, like Matterport and a lot of the ability of 360 cameras, you can capture a sort of university environment pretty quickly. And be able to then replicate that as an alternate socialization space. It also can provide an alternate teaching space as well. And so this is something we're looking at over the summer. How much of this sort of social fabric can we reconstruct by mixing all these technologies together? A little virtual reality, a little augmented reality, some telepresence, some Zoom, some social media experiences. And put together a kind of new virtual university space.
So Russ, this sounds like what Second Life was, what, 5 to 10 years ago, but it never took off. Is it more than Second Life? Was Second Life just at the wrong time?
Well, first off, that you have to go back 20 or 25 years for Second Life.
Was it that long?
Yeah, it's scary, but it's true. And the other thing is that they are very successful. They made $400 million last year in profit. They have a huge user base. They found a system that worked for their users and provided them with a socialization environment. And people stuck with it, and right from the get-go. Same thing with the Sims and other social environments. You can create them and people will come. If you provide them the socialization tools, the skills, and you continue to upgrade the technology, they'll stay with you. So in a way, the answer is yes, it is, but it's the 2030 version of that, which is to say bringing all of these virtual technologies into play, telepresence, the 5G abilities to have very strong bandwidths going back and forth. And let me say in terms of the disadvantaged students, and we actually support a lot of students at Harvard who have these environments at home where they don't have these tools, give them a 5G hotspot in that little kit so that they can get good bandwidth, so they can connect in a way that's comparable with their other students in their cohorts. So it is the idea of a virtual environment, and certainly one which serves both teaching and social, but using every new technology we can get our hands on. And a lot of them haven't been used yet, and they certainly haven't used in this way.
Okay. I'm going to try to reach out to some others now. And so, Chris Mostaza, you have a question about adopting technologies for virtual office hours. Tom, can you unmute Chris? And Chris, can you ask your question?
Sure. Well, first, nice to meet everyone, and thank you so much for the great presentations. I'm at the University of Pennsylvania here in Philadelphia, and I'm director of IT for all of the academic departments in our School of Arts and Sciences. So I've been spending a lot of time in meetings with faculty in each of the divisions talking about remote teaching. But one of the things that we are less prepared for, I think, is with how to replicate things that traditionally happen in the physical space, like waiting rooms and things like this, for providing like many-to-one services. One advisor needs to see many students, and there's a complicated scheduling problem with this, or faculty and many TAs for a big class managing office hours, for example, and how we'll bring that all together. So I was just interested in what others are doing in that space, and if anybody has any specific software recommendations, very interested to hear.
So we have been evaluating that as well. The queuing issue is a big one on campuses, especially when you have everybody returning. We have already made the decision that we will have our students back on campus, and we're excited about that. But the queuing issue is one that we know we need to solve. And I saw in the chat the solution QList came up. We evaluated QList and something called Qmatic as well. We liked the mobility of the QList technology, the ability of it to back and forth with the student, and a student could actually say, I'm running 10 minutes late, or drop out of the queue. You could have queues and you could have appointments both. And so that is on our list of items where we have a technology needs task force for the fall, looking at the classrooms, looking at whatever technology we need, as well as technology for student support services. And the QList one has risen to the top for programs like our scholarships and student aid, which at our school, we're 75 to 80% Pell. So FAFSA and all the planning for that is a big deal for us. So the Qmatic is what the scholarships team had used previously, but they like this because it's more virtual. The Qmatic was they have a virtual environment, but it's more of an in-person queuing. So we're looking at moving towards QList, and we use WebEx for most of those one-to-one advisor. And then, you can have your personal room. So admissions has been using their personal room, and they'll have open office hours in their personal room. And the students that have questions of the admissions counselors will just drop in. And if you have your personal room, similar to what we did here with Zoom, you can allow people in or not in, and that controls the Zoom bombing or WebEx bombing kinds of activities.
Oh, yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. Yeah, we thought about using Zoom with a waiting room for that feature. In our advising offices, the advisors wanted to be able to have like any advisor help any student who's in the queue at any given time, so that it became like a more difficult problem for us.
So what we did with that, apologies, dog's getting ready to bark. What we did with that was we created generic accounts. So our help desk had office hours during the exams to help students with tech issues. And so we just created an ITS Help WebEx client account. And, I know it's, from an IT security perspective, you don't want multiple people logging in, but again, these are extraordinary times. So we're doing that across campus so that if career services had something, 3 or 4 people could come into the career from the staffing if they needed to. The Dean of Students is wanting to do some things like that for some of her activities, so that they have a generic WebEx account, even to host events, right? So it's not assigned to one individual.
Does anybody else have comments about that? I can't see if Ray Lefebvre is here or not, but I know that they are at UMass Boston. He built offices in Verbella, which provides a virtual environment. Ray, are you there? I guess not. Okay, Tom, can you point me to well, let me ask a question in the meantime. Millennials are students who are quite familiar with online gaming, etc., would seem to be sort of the perfect candidates for moving to this type of environment where everything is in this virtual space. Are you finding that older faculty and staff are able to equally to join in, or are they finding it difficult? Somebody at the beginning said something about give me one specific technology. Is that the faculty or the students who are saying that?
Well, I think certainly the faculty are not moving nearly as quickly as the students. And it's interesting when you look at the questionnaires about how did it go for the spring semester. The faculty went, well, it was a little rough at the beginning and it wasn't bad. The students went, it was terrible all the way. There's clearly a difference in perception, I think, of how it went. I think it would only get worse if the faculty had something like Zoom plus 4 other things to balance in their agenda. It would certainly be more challenging. The students, I think, would say, oh, we got these 4 different apps, one's for this, one's for that, and they go, okay, no problem. The faculty, no, it gets more difficult the more you try and push them, I think, into that domain.
Okay, thanks, Russ. I'm sorry, I had.
Can I ask a question of Russ?
Yes.
Please.
Thank you. So I'm really interested in the idea of creating your campus as a virtual game where you have players coming in their avatars and having the ability to kind of walk through even orientation. Dr. Coleman, we're doing orientation online, and it's all of us, we created videos and those kinds of things, but it's still very one way and not as personal. So I'd love to hear from a developer's perspective, what is the technology that you need to kind of lay that groundwork, you know, at a lesser resourced institution like NCCU, that we would need to kind of step into that world, just out of curiosity?
Well, 2 steps. First, you have to create the analog to the physical world, which is the buildings and the physical location. Right now, the best way to do that is with Matterport. Matterport is a technology that is a camera system that basically captures not only the exact dimensionality of the space using LiDAR, but also very high-res texture maps. And it puts it together into a very seamless, very high-resolution version of whatever the camera is seeing, full 360. It was developed for the real estate industry, and this is how everybody sells high-end apartments and houses these days, is they give you a virtual walkthrough. It can be done with an operator who can be trained in about a half an hour. It's basically a tripod and a camera. You move it around. Every place you put the camera creates an information spot. You link them together, and you can seamlessly walk through buildings. Also, it creates a what I would call a dollhouse view. It puts it all together, so you can zoom back out, move around, and jump into a particular place. The big advantage is that it does it automatically. As you are shooting, it's uploading it to a cloud system, it's stitching it. The next morning, you download your file, it's all done. It's a service-oriented business, and it's quite affordable. So that gives you the ability to capture your spaces. Once you've captured them, then you can either stay in the Matterport environment, particularly for tours, campus tours, incoming students, prospective students, family, faculty who have not been to the university. Works quite well for that because there's no real or not much interactivity into it. Or you can tag and label things. What's this? Pop-up information. But you can export all that information. You can export it into other programs. So if you want to go into the more interactive environment, like a multi-user online game, you basically can pull all that out and go into Unreal Engine 5. You can go into any of the basic game engines and now begin to add in the interactivity that comes with those game engines. The ability to manage hundreds or thousands of avatars that are individually created, the ability to maintain real world physics, the doors open, the elevators work, things like that. And to begin to build it out very much the way a game developer would. And all that's very templated, and we're 20 years into that development in the game world. I would say a whole lot of our incoming students in the freshman class know how to build games. And in fact, we're very much looking at this being a student-built activity. At MIT recently, prior to commencement, we had over 700 students went into Minecraft and completely replicated the entire campus in 2 weeks in Minecraft, just so they could use it for virtual graduation. a massive amount of sort of student activity that was focused on something, which could then be used later on for other purposes. So it's a combination of existing technologies, but used in a slightly different way, basically. So people who know Unity, people who are basically set up to understand game engines, and on the photographic side, any of your campus photography crews could convert almost instantly to the ability to start capturing the kind of data for physical structures that you want to use to build these virtual worlds. They might be a single building, they might be the entire campus.
Thanks, Russ. Orlando Leon, you've had a couple of questions or comments about Zoom breakout rooms, and I've seen a couple of others. So Tom, could you unmute Orlando?
Everyone, Hawaiian background for Hawaiian shirt today. How are you all?
Ah, where are you really?
I'm in Fresno today,
Okay.
California State University, Fresno. So I'm sorry, your question, Michael, what was that again, please?
So you asked a question about Zoom breakout rooms, right? So the question is, what was your question or comment?
It was more of a comment in regards to our discussion we've been having, how to potentially engage students, how to manage queues. We've been using Zoom to basically do kind of like a waiting area, like a Genius bar, for example. And as students are coming in, but maybe even faculty and staff, we would have a moderator or facilitator basically push people to the appropriate breakout room so they can have group chats. And so we use that. We're also using Zoom for technical support, but we're using it for advisor sessions and many other ways. It's been really helpful, and Zoom has been really good to do that.
Okay, thank you. So I just saw a question from Chris Deed about what students want. Chris, can you say more?
Oh, good. There's two ways to think about this. One way is to say, how do we replicate the physical campus in the virtual world? And we've been talking about that. It's certainly a worthy thing to do. But another way to think about it is to say, how can we take advantages of the unique capabilities of online interaction that are actually better in some ways than what can happen in the physical world? And that requires a kind of creativity about imagining different possibilities. So one that we already know works because of social media is that online, it's easier to meet people who have some common interest or similarity with you than it is physically, even if you're on the same campus physically, if it's any size at all. And so having students complete on a voluntary basis a bunch of background information about themselves, hobbies, where they grew up, interests, and then running them through some of the many programs now that can do sophisticated pattern matching, and giving students a multidimensional printout that says, here are people that seem to share your interest in gaming, here are people that went to high school in the same city, here are people that are interested in the same sub-major as you are, and so on. And then opening up breakout rooms where people can come and meet informally and get to know one another. I think that students really miss the social part of it, and having your avatar interact with somebody else's avatar is a little deficient on the social side. We're still working on that technology.
Yeah. Hi, Chris.
Can I chime in real quick on this one? Just
Sure,
in what I've learned from students, I've really given my staff the charge to not try to recreate these real life experiences, because we know we can't do that, not in today's day. Maybe one day we will. So that rather than trying to recreate our in-person experiences online, I've asked them to really rethink or shift our thinking about what we can do online that enables forms of learning that expands the limits of what we can do on a campus. So I think that there are a lot of opportunities for students to achieve things that otherwise might be impossible on campus that they can now do virtually. And it kind of removes also some of those financial, medical, or the hardships that our students often face, even as far as being at home and having a caretake, they can still now do those things at the same time. So I think it's just really trying to shift the paradigm of, let's not try to aim to recreate these in person. Let's really make it its own unique, right, experience, and try to look at things that maybe we weren't able to do before on campus that now we can do in the virtual world.
Yeah. Could I say something, Michael?
Please.
Chris and I work together at Harvard, and we talk about this often, but I totally agree, Chris, that if you think back 16 years ago at Harvard, they created a social engagement platform called Facebook, which was at its base intent to do exactly that, although it had a slightly less benign intent, shall we say. But the idea of socially connecting the students through a social structure, absolutely. We see that regardless of which technology you apply it to. If you're doing it through what's available today or what's available in the fall or 2 years from now, that social fabric is really what holds the whole thing together. And I absolutely agree that the ability to create new types of social structures through these interactions are really paramount, particularly if you can address the issue of privacy and security, so that the system does not to the student appear to be something where they're being observed or being controlled, but they're able to interact more freely as they would in the real world. It's a delicate balance between being able to make sure it's a safe environment for them, virtually, but also giving them the freedom to do the things they would do in the real world.
We have an experience of a few years ago trying to introduce a technology, a mobile technology that was creating interest groups, if you will. A local company was a startup and said, hey, would you be willing to come and participate? We did not force anything, so we didn't have these affinity groups that we shared like we do with Engage. So within Engage, it's our students kind of working together. This other one was a broader context. The students were like, you know what? Just when we're interested in some type of social networking application, we'll find it ourselves. Thank you, but we don't need you to help us. I think doing something like creating a virtual world where they could create their own spaces inside that is way different, because again, it's just the platform that they can walk into virtually. To Dr. Coleman's point, I think we need to have multiple layers of activities for our students because there's varying technical abilities. Some will run 700 Harvard students ran and created their own commencement, but there are more than 700 students at Harvard, right? So those are finding their own ways of connecting in this new world. And I think our job is to take all this in and to see how many of these tools we can give to our students so that they can continue to form the bonds that are lasting, college bonds. I think all of us would say some of our best friends are those we met in college. So I think that's the challenge is in a product like Engage, or what we call Engage, but Campus Labs does let students create their own affinity groups inside that as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people want a single answer to these questions, and it's not going to be there. It's going to be layered, it's going to be hybrid, it's going to be multiplexed. It's not the answer people want to hear, but I think it is the truth. Whether you're looking at how the whole university reacts or how individual layers of it, it's going to be stacked choices with lots of different variability.
Thanks, Russ. Lori Landay, you've had a couple of questions. One about Discord servers, which I know nothing about, and you had another question a moment ago about 2D audio. So Lori, could you could
Sure.
I ask you to talk to us?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. So in terms of high fidelity, I'll start with that one. So, that was a VR, social VR platform, and they pivoted it away from doing like VR headset stuff in a kind of shocking way. It's a company co-founded by the founder of Second Life. So, we would expect them to be like, in on VR. And Philip Rosedale was saying we were too early, right? And so I know Russ has a lot of, Russ and I have talked about this before, and Russ has a lot of good insights about that idea. And so what they've come up with, it's at highfidelity.com, is like a 2D interface that works on desktop and works really nicely on mobile, on PC or on Mac. And it has, they say it has spatialized audio. I'm at Berklee College of Music. We would tell you that it is not spatialized because it's not like 360, like all around, but it's positional, whatever. It's spatialized audio as far as most people are concerned, because as you like turn your little like round icon around, it sounds like people are all around you. And as you move away from the other icons that are the people, you can't hear them anymore. So you can be in the same like 2D space on your desktop or on your phone, but be like, oh, you know, like Michael and I are going to have a conversation. Let's just move our little, you know, faces off to the side. And now we still know that we're in the same room, the same 2D space, but we can't hear everybody, and we can actually talk at the same time, right? Which you think is something you don't want until you've just spent the past however many months on Zoom. And then you know that we actually do want to talk at the same time. And I think it's going to get more robust. I mean, right now there's like a little bit of visual information that tells you how, like your amplitude, how loud you're being and soft you're being, and what direction you're pointing. But I'm hoping that they'll have more like visual stuff that maybe could be like a +1 or I agree or something, because sometimes you don't want to say something, but you just want to be like, right. So that's that. And then Discord is actually also, I think, an audio, has good audio affordances. I've really found that the video part of Zoom is its least useful part of it. I mean, it's really nice to see people's faces and like kind of get to know them like for a little while, but the attention towards like the camera and where do you look, and I mean, there's so much that's been written about it. I'm sure we all know about that part of it. It's great to do screen sharing, and it's great to be able to do file sharing, and we all need that. But I think what we need is to be able to hear each other with the best audio. So I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you. Elmore, I've seen a number of comments from you over the past few minutes. Can you share them with us? Elmore, are you still there?
I was struggling to get to my microphone and unmute. Yeah, one of the things I was curious about is just what the real problems that people are encountering are. What we've talked a lot about the possibilities and things. You know, where have you stubbed your toes? What do you wish you'd known 3 or 4 months ago that you could have avoided in this process?
I take it that's to anyone. And Leah, you're unmuted. Russ is unmuted.
Sure.
So please.
Sure. So, you know, that's a great question. I think the stumbling point has been the foundational technology for all of our students. Not only the technology, but as Russ mentioned, the ability to have connectivity in your now safer at home space. For us, that was a big challenge. If you talk about academic, then the challenges are much greater because faculty weren't prepared necessarily to drop everything and teach like that. So we focus on the student experience. Dr. Coleman's initial statements were true. Our campus, and Russ mentioned this about Harvard, our students want to be on our campuses. The biggest challenge is the students left and we were scurrying and they were scurrying. And so we're going to be better in the fall than we were in the spring. I think the spring was just a combination of us trying lots of things to see what fit. So I think we're gonna, again, our focus right now is on what are those lessons learned, and the lessons learned were we can't just try one thing. We can't just have one type of event. We can't just have one solution. All of our students are special, and we need to find ways to bring them back in emotionally and bring them back in to be successful students. But I think the greatest challenge for us was just, we had technology, we didn't know how to use it in this world. It was just trial and error. So I'll stop there. Dr. Coleman, you probably have.
I'll chime in on that and say, for me, and kind of to echo Lori, who put in the chat, I wish that I had known more about our students. It's like you say you know your students, but we didn't really know our students in terms of the capacity. What did they have? Like, most of our students are using their phones. A lot of our students didn't have laptops. We kind of make assumptions about our students, and then we had to go in and do a lot of surveying, right, Leah? Like, we had to send out surveys and who has access to this and who. And so I wish now that we kind of collect that up front, or just know that information, and then have a stockpile of jetpacks and laptops. We just really, we say we know our students, but we didn't know our students in terms of the divide or what they're dealing with in that regard, or how they interact with the technology. We assume they all have laptops, so they go to the computer lab, and that's not the case.
Yeah, let me echo that as well. We clearly did not know what the student environment was like when they left. We had no clue. We didn't know where they went. We didn't know what their environment was like, what technology they had. But in addition to surveying on what technology, I think it's important to survey what's the life experience in their house. Are there 10 people in that house and they have no personal space at all? Do they have their own room? Do they have a cabana by the pool? I mean, what's going on? We were shocked, I think, the first time that students started appearing on Zoom with their backgrounds behind them, because a lot of the expectations were completely off. Some of the super best students were obviously in a deprived environment, and vice versa. Some of the students that were on the other end were had luxury. And we had no idea of that. And I think it's absolutely crucial. I think Leah and Angela are correct. We need to know the student and the student's environment if we're going to change their ability to use these technologies.
Thanks, Russ. Eric Lefebvre, you had a question about Eric. What was your question? I've missed it now. Can you ask it?
Yep. Hi, Michael. I was just curious about if anyone's had any accessibility issues with any of the new technologies they've rolled out for any students with disabilities or things of that nature.
That is one of our check blocks in our review, and we work with that department, which is inside Dr. Coleman's unit. And they're very good about letting us know if we have run astray, if you will, but no, that is part of our review.
Yeah, and we're working, this isn't digital, but with our accessibility, the mask part, right? We do have some deaf, hard of hearing students. So we are getting some of those masks that they have the clear part in the mouth, because that's another part that we don't all think about. Our students that are DHH, they look at those cues in your mouth, and when that's gone, that significantly impacts the experience. And even with the faculty, we were telling faculty and saying in the classroom that masks are required. They're going to be required. So we're really going to have to kind of navigate that piece, how that's going to work. Are we going to require some technology probably for our accessibility students in the classroom, even in person even?
Yeah. Interesting. Thank you.
Another reason to beef up the audio side of things. If you can't do it visually, you've got to enhance the audio. It's really a key to sort of boosting that total comprehensibility out. I had some interesting discussions recently with our foreign language faculty. They said, how are we going to teach a foreign language if everybody's wearing a mask? In a sense, it's the same problem as with a disability. You have to see how people are using their mouth and their voice if you're going to be teaching language. Nobody had thought about this before.
Yep. Thank you.
There was a question. Artie Paul had a question about immersion requirements, but Artie has apparently left the meeting. I'm not quite sure what the question is, but Russ, it raised a question that I had when you talked about your virtual faculty member being projected on the wall full size and moving around the room. Do you require some sort of a headset to observe this, or is this a hologram in the room?
Yeah, we're sort of, again, looking at the future and looking at the present. we're very close to, within probably 6 months, some fairly inexpensive headsets that connect to phones so that all the capacity for computing is in the phone they already have.
Wow.
And that would give them the sort of spatial viewing that you would get in VR. We're not quite there yet. No, actually, these are little $90, $100 projectors that are just projecting on the wall. Something that they can position on the wall, the floor, wherever they want, that don't require any special sort of headset. But if you were in your room, you turn out the lights and you have an image that's filling the wall at life size, it's very immersive, especially if you're immersed audio-wise in your headset. Now it's much better than looking at what might be only a 6 or 8 inch image on your laptop. It really begins to feel like it, particularly if the audio coming from the teaching side is quite good. Like Lori was talking about, that there are spatial cues. As the teacher's moving around, their voice is shifting from left to right, from front to back, these types of things. So no, we're really trying to look at right now, what could we deliver in September in these little kits that are basically $300 or $400 worth of pieces. We're actually looking at going back, those of people who know VR technology, 5 or 6 years to the idea of the Gear VR, where you took your phone and put it into a cardboard or a plastic headset. The problem wasn't the headset, it was the phone. The phones weren't very good. Now the phones are spectacular. If you put a brand new Android or Apple phone in a cardboard headset, it's amazingly good. So it does mean that there is potential. And I think it was Leah was pointing out, the phone is their primary device. That's really how they connect to the world. So if you can use the phone to drive this, then you're way ahead of the game. The rest of their computing capacity is going to be spread over a wide spectrum. The phone is a pretty predictable environment.
Okay. Well, I see, thank you, Russ. I see that we are actually past 1 o'clock, and I guess a number of our participants have had to leave. Fascinating discussion. I think we could have gone on for quite a while more, and I saw that there was a query about whether we might have a further session, perhaps in another month. Let me thank our 3 panelists, Leah, Angela, Russ, as well as my colleagues in the background who've been trying to send questions to me, and Tom, for your help, and then all of you who came today. We will be sending a questionnaire out, and we will probably be scheduling another meetup in about a month. I don't think we have a specific date, but you'll hear from us very soon. So thanks to all. Great conversation.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
And well, have a great weekend.
Thanks.
You as well.